at this place. It was hollow where you could come up. He said then the SEAL team, they took these men there with them, and they traveled about 2 miles up into the cave. They were to explore it, to see what was up in there. And as I was being told about this, the admiral that was the leader of this group, I believe he was admiral, I don't know exactly his rank. He could have been a lieutenant colonel, but from the way it was described to me, it sounded more like a rear admiral. I didn't know the Navy, but you got to remember, he spent his whole life, 20 years in the Navy, so he could have been that high of a rank. Don't know for sure if he's rear admiral or a lieutenant colonel or what he was, but at any rate, he'd had a dream the night before, and he said that this lady had come to him before and warned him about things. And he said that night before, he said she's never been wrong about what would happen. He kind of felt like she was a guardian angel to him. He said, but she warned him and said, you're going to encounter beings inside of here, the likes you've never seen in your life. And she told him, what you're carrying will not stop them. And so she instructed him that he should take in a type of explosive type of round that would be used in a weapon that when it would hit a human body, the human body would just explode. He said you wouldn't have to hit a human one time, they're done. And he said the men the next morning, they didn't like the idea, but they obeyed him and they took it. He said because the weight of everything was much heavier than normal. And he said they went up through that cave, and he said, of course, it's not like a little cave. He said you could take 6 men and stretch out hand to hand and still not touch the sides of it. It was so massive. And he said he'd always noticed when he would go about 2 miles, anytime he ever went somewhere exploring up in Antarctica, you go about 2 miles, he said that's when you run into some crazy things. And he said we got in there about 2 miles in. He said just as you're starting to go up a little incline there, he said, and suddenly these alien beings come out. He said you could make out their faces. They had a kind of you could see their faces and stuff. You see their head. He said, but their bodies were like fire. And I kind of put an image up here just for the sake of an image, as well as, this image here about, this was a different story altogether. Some Navy SEALs going into some other kind of cave or something like that. But I just kind of put it there for a reference. But when he talked about them, he said that they had bodies that were kind of like fire. And he said he didn't have to tell his men. They were so terrified of these beings here. They began to engage in battle with them. And he said when you shot them with one of these explosive rounds, they didn't go down. He said, but they got angrier and angrier. And he said he said their faces would get redder, and these bodies of fire and stuff. He said it'd take about 3-4 shots to take one of them down. He said, and somehow or another, they were attacking them. And of course, he said before this all started, he said they were speaking with like a telepathy, threatening them that they were going to kill them. This is one of the reasons why they engaged in battle, and at the same time trying to retreat because they were so terrified of these beings. And he said they began to take them down with these bullets that they were shooting. He said, but they were being so severely wounded, and he said they didn't even know what they were hitting them with. He said, but when they did retreat out of there, he said he didn't lose any of the men. He said, but they had broken bones, broken ribs, bruised organs. And he said, we had heavy flight jackets, everything on the body armor we were wearing. And still we were suffering tremendous damage to the body and everything, broken limbs, etc. He said they finally retreated and they got out of there and they got back to the submarine. And he said he wrote his report, but before they could leave, the commander wanted them to go back and bring a body. He said, we got to have it for research. He said, you wrote in there that you killed some. They went down. They were down. And they didn't want to go back. But he got a group willing to go back with him. And when they went back, he said they couldn't find a body, couldn't find their shell casings or nothing. He said it was so clean as if nobody had ever been there. But I tell you, friends, I believe they had ran into fallen angels. Now, I do know from what I've been told about alien beings to begin with, as long as it's done within a certain period of time, they can take and bring that being back to life again. They've got that type of technology. So even though they may have killed them, they may have survived. Then again, they may have really died too. If you remember, there were 200 fallen angels. 200. Now, I